Try to get that light. How's that? Good. Turn this up a little bit. Hey! Stop looking at my bosoms. Alright. Okay. It's been a while since I've done the Pacific War, and I didn't realize it until it hit me that I hadn't done one for a while. So, it's been a month, and damn it, I like these videos. So, sorry, I'm playing with it again. Not in public, right? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start this video. This is episode 16. It's actually more than that, but fall of Rangoon.
Last week, we witnessed one of the most pivotal moments of the Pacific War, the fall of Java. The surrender of the Dutch island not only brought the total collapse of the Abda Command and the Malay Barrier, which had failed in every one of its missions, but also consolidated the position of the Japanese Empire in the Pacific, having achieved supremacy over the two main resource hubs of the East, Singapore and the Dutch East Indies. With the completion of the Malayan campaign and the Dutch surrender, new objectives appeared for the Japanese on the horizon, and today we're going to focus on one of them, the British colony of Burma with its key port of Rangoon and the last of the Chinese lifelines, the Burma Road. While there's plenty to say about the fighting on the front lines, there are stories from back home to be told too, and that's where the sponsor of this video, Magellan TV, the documentary streaming service founded by filmmaker.
Okay, we're back.
With the disaster at the Sitang Bridge, the Japanese had managed to break through the meagre British defences and had thus opened a clear way to Rangoon by February 23rd. In response, General Hutton had ordered its evacuation, thinking that Rangoon, with clear signs of looting and rioting, and no hope of a real chance at defending it. Meanwhile, the Japanese were already preparing to march on the city. By March 3rd, General Ida had ordered the 112th and 143rd Regiments to advance on Wau, with the objective of encircling and destroying the British defenders at Pegu, while the rest of the 55th Division protected their rear at Daiku, and the 33rd Division marched west through the densely wooded hills of Pegu and then turned south to seize Rangoon with speed. The fall of this port would prevent the Chinese from receiving further aid by the Burma Road, since most of the supplies arrived from there. Cutting off the Burma Road would thus erase the last of the Chinese lifelines and leave the regime of Chiang Kai-shek in a very precarious position, making it a crucial objective for the Japanese Empire. After a long series of negotiations with Wavell, Chiang had agreed to send an expeditionary force to Burma to protect their last lifeline and aid the Allied effort to defend Burma. By the start of March, the CEF, under the command of Lieutenant General Joseph Stilwell, was stationed at the Burma Road and the Shan States, and had a division at Toungoo, along with the 1st Burma Division. At the same time, the remainder of the Burman defenders reconstituted at Pegu, and new reinforcements arrived at Rangoon. Yet before it could even enter into action, the 63rd Indian Brigade was ambushed on the evening of March 5th, suffering heavy casualties and the loss of its commanding officers. The following day, the Japanese attack on Pegu started with a heavy bombardment. Then the 143rd Regiment began its assault. South of Pegu, the 7th Hussars were ambushed by Japanese anti-tank guns, but managed to counterattack and overrun the invaders. The M3 Stuart tanks, nicknamed Honeys, then encountered some Type 95 Hago tanks and got to destroy 4 of them before retreating to Hlegu. While the British units retreated, Alexander then decided to commence the demolition plan of Rangoon, executing a scorched earth tactic to deny the Japanese the use of its facilities. On the morning of March 7th, the Allied force found Hlegu occupied by the Japanese. They fought fiercely to escape and eventually broke through a Japanese roadblock, albeit with many losses. After the engagement, many British units began to retreat in disorder. but Ida decided not to hotly pursue them, allowing the Burmese defenders to escape. At this point, Rangoon was under a cloud of billowing smoke after the destruction of its port and oil facilities. The final withdrawal from the city.
Do you think that's why the Japanese didn't follow them? Because there's going to be more people in the town to defend it, and if they're destroying the town, you're going to be fighting people who are also, all they're doing is just holding you up to destroy everything. So I'm going to guess Japan would probably try to salvage what they could, but otherwise it's just a loss. And it's really just probably wasted time. I mean, you're going to send some forces there to see what you can salvage, but you're not going there with the intent to hold it like you would have. Especially if all that smoke's going up and everyone can see it for miles, then there's no benefit.
City was ordered.
My opinion.
And the Allied force then departed towards Tharwadi, but ran into a roadblock set up by the 214th Regiment at Taoqian that was meant to cover the flanks of the 33rd Division. With a tenacious resistance, the invaders managed to repel 3 consecutive assaults by the bulk of the British Army, forcing them to adopt a defensive stance for the night. The scene at Taoqian was one of confusion and congestion, and soon the Japanese launched a heavy counterattack during the night, resulting in hand-to-hand combat, but the Allied battalion held its place, which inflicted many losses on the British. Yet General Sakurai of the 33rd Division didn't expect the defenders to abandon Rangoon so easily, and so decided to prioritize the capture of the port over the destruction of the British Army, ordering the 214th Regiment to start its withdrawal. At dawn on March 8th, Alexander then ordered a...
I completely forgot about the port. Yeah, of course they're going to go there. Completely forgot about it. Yeah. Okay. My bad.
A new attack against the Taoqian roadblock, with the 7th Hussars breaking through the Japanese positions and allowing the Allied force to escape. By March 10th, Rangoon had fallen into Japanese hands, but at least Alexander's army had managed to escape complete annihilation. And to the south, another operation was planned to mop up the remaining Allied presence in Sumatra. General Yamashita had planned to send his Imperial Guards Division to occupy central and northern Sumatra, where the Dutch were still holding after the 38th Division was finally contained at Muara Tabo by March 2nd. Heavy fighting ensued in the following days, but with the surrender of Java on March 8th, General Overaka decided to retreat with his remaining 9,000 soldiers to concentrate on the north of the island and thus start an evacuation. Yamashita's plan was to land 1 strong detachment at Sabang Island and Kutaraja, 1 small detachment at Idi to secure the Langsa and Pangkalan-Brandon oil fields, and the main force of the division at Labuhan Roko to rapidly occupy Medan. By March 10th, the invasion force, escorted by a large fleet under Admiral Ozawa, had departed Singapore en route to its objectives. On March 12th, 1 battalion of the Kobayashi detachment landed on Sabang unopposed and rapidly seized the island, while the remaining 2 battalions landed at Cape Pedro and quickly captured the Kotaraja airfield. Further to the south, the Yoshida detachment landed south of Idi and captured its objectives facing no resistance. And at Tanjung Tiram, General Nishimura sent 2 battalions south to cut off the withdrawal of the Dutch defenders, while the rest of his division drove north to seize Medan and its airfield. At this point, the Dutch were already retreating to their designated positions south of the Alice Valley, so they would only execute delaying actions to gain as much time as possible, alongside destroying their airfields and harbour facilities along the way. On the night of March...
We did it. We care about the people too. That's why we block the sound so no one can hear. Alright, sounds good, bud. Back to the video.
On the night of March 13th, 3 Dutch companies at Simpang Raja were assaulted by Japanese soldiers. The defenders held until dawn, but in the end had to retreat in disorder towards Tiga Roengu. Unfortunately, they found the Japanese already there, and were eventually routed by the superior Japanese firepower. The invaders would then overrun the Dutch defenders at Prapat, Porcia and Belige, hastily pursuing the survivors to Quetta Bulabenteng and successfully occupying Sibarongbarong. Thus, the Dutch soldiers that were retreating from Moraretabo were effectively cut off and had to surrender on March 15th. In the meantime, Nishimura's main force swiftly seized Medan without opposition, and then started to raid the Dutch positions at Tiga Benenga for the next couple of days. By March 23rd, Quetta Bulabenteng was under heavy attack and in grave danger of being overrun, so Overaka ordered a general evacuation towards Liang before this position was captured. As night fell, the Japanese attacked Quetta Bulabenteng, but the fierce Dutch defenders managed to hold them off. Yet despite their bravery, many natives in the Dutch army were beginning to desert, and the state of Aceh began to rebel against Dutch rule, so Overaka quickly ordered them to start their withdrawal on the night of March 21st, while the rest of his forces fell further back towards the Alice Valley. Nishimura followed suit in hot pursuit, and captured Kotajane on March 25th, but the Dutch were receiving more damage by the amount of desertions. By March 27th, the Kobayashi detachment had reached the Dutch headquarters at Blancajaran, which was virtually undefended, so Overaka had no other choice but to surrender with his remaining 2,000 soldiers the following day. And with the end of organized resistance at Sumatra, we want to mention that back on March 4th, the Japanese launched Operation K, an unsuccessful air raid carried out by two Kawanishi H-8K flying boats against Pearl Harbor. They failed to gain intelligence over the state of Hawaii and the Pacific Fleet, and they only caused minor damage on the islands. A follow-up to this raid was launched on March 10th, but one of the flying boats was shot down by a Brewster F-28 Buffalo near the Midway Atoll, provoking the eventual cancellation of the operation. In turn, the Americans launched a naval bombardment of Wake Island, followed by an air raid on February 24th, causing severe damage to installations on the island and sinking two patrol boats. Admiral Halsey then turned to the northwest and launched another air raid over Minami Torishima on March 4th, again inflicting heavy damage on the island's facilities. Now we turn to the island of New Guinea, where the...
I didn't realize that Japan had tried a second attack. I guess more surveillance to, still an attack, but certainly surveillance to check on, excuse me. Okay. I'm sure it was just to see what was going on. If they were building ships there, they have no idea. They're just, have they salvaged anything? But I didn't realize they went back for, I'll call it a part 2. Interesting.
The Japanese were planning their first offensive operation after the fall of Rabaul. To fully control the seas north of Australia and completely cut off the British Dominion, the invaders were now planning to invade Port Moresby in British New Guinea and Tulagi in the Solomon Islands. But before that, the Japanese first needed to occupy the Salamaua Lei area to establish an airbase for the support of further operations in the region. Back on February 8th, the invaders had expanded from Rabaul with a naval landing at Surmi and Gasmata, capturing the airfield there without opposition. With Gasmata firmly under their control, the Japanese would then prepare for the invasion of Salamaua Lei. The plan was for a battalion of the South Seas Detachment to capture Salamaua and its airfield, while 620 SNLF Marines landed at Lae and rapidly secured the area. They were to be escorted by a fleet mainly consisting of 2 light cruisers and 6 destroyers, under the command of Admiral Kajioka. Back on February 20th, the 4th Fleet had also been subjected to an air raid by a US aircraft carrier task force, under Admiral Wilson Brown, that forced Admiral Inouye to delay the launch of the invasion. Although Japanese bombers were launched to intercept the American task force, and they succeeded in their objective of forcing the Americans to turn back, the loss of 23 aircraft was enough reason to postpone the operation. To prevent another air raid over the 4th Fleet, Inouye dispatched a support fleet consisting of 4 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers and 2 destroyers under the command of Admiral Goto. Finally, on March 5th, the invasion force departed Rabaul, heading to the Salamaua Lae area. Under a violent storm, the Horie unit landed on Salamaua in the early hours of March 8th, while the SNLF Marines landed at the coast to the south of Lae. Prior to their landings, the 200 Australian defenders had already retreated to Wau after executing demolition operations to prevent the use of their facilities for the invaders. After only a couple of hours, the Horia unit captured Salamaua, its airfield, and the town of Kela, while the SNLF Marines did the same for Lae and its airfield. In the meantime, 2 task forces were assigned to Admiral Brown to carry out a new air raid, this time over the recently established Japanese presence in the Samalawa-Lae area. The Americans had achieved great success on their previous raids over the Gilberts, the Marshalls, Rabaul, Wake, and Minami Torishima, and Admiral Chester Nimitz, new Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet, believed that this attack would have the advantage of surprise and could thus be deadly. By March 10th, Brown's forces had advanced undetected to the Gulf of Papua off the southern shore of New Guinea, where he ordered the SBD Dauntless bombers, TBD Devastator torpedo bombers, and F-4F Wildcats to lift off and prepare for the incoming attack. At about 0840, 104 American planes were in the air, preparing to head for their objectives. This time they found no opposing enemy fighters, so the element of surprise was on their side. The Lexington group arrived at a position above Lae around 0920 and immediately started to bombard shipping there. 3 large Japanese transports were at Lae, and they were repeatedly strafed by the fighters, while dozens of bombs fell around them, resulting in their complete destruction. The Lexington group then headed to Salamaua, while some bombers approached targets of opportunity, damaging the cruiser Yubari, 2 destroyers, the mine layer Sugaru, and 2 more transports. Meanwhile, the Yorktown group, following on...
That's probably like the most amount of damage I've seen Japan take in one sitting in this entire series so far. That could not have... They could not have been happy. I have a feeling they were not happy at that.
The heels of the Lexington group repeatedly assaulted the Yubari, causing severe damage to Kajioka's flagship. Although the Americans believed the cruiser to have sunk, the Yubari had managed to control the damage after evading 67 bombs and 12 torpedoes.
Holy cow!
The Yorktown group then strafed Salamaua, inflicted severe damage on a seaplane tender, and got to sink a minesweeper. Following Brown's strike, 8 B-17 bombers from Townsville arrived on March 11th and bombed the area as well, causing further damage on the facilities and on the Yubari. This was the first time the Allies had inflicted large-scale damage during a counterattack since the start of the war, and was a portent of the future direction of campaigns in the South Pacific area. The Japanese had lost 4 vessels and had to send 7 more to be repaired, but the issues raised by the successful counterattack were hidden in the shadow of the fall of Java. Despite the success of Brown's raid, though, the Japanese had achieved a foothold over the island of New Guinea, and the Allies had much to fear if Australia was cut off. While Tokyo was still celebrating the capture of the Dutch East Indies, further operations were already being planned, but you'll have to wait a couple of weeks for that. Next week we have a special...
Yeah. With the Pacific War, I never thought about Australia. But I can see why you hold that whole chain of islands there. It's anywhere Australia goes. I mean, they probably have to go out of their way to avoid you. Yeah, and I did not think about Australia. There's too much going on right here. And I saw Australia, clearly you see them on the map. Wasn't even registering yet. There's just so much stuff happening. But yeah, this is the first time Japan got really hit. I was going to say punched in the nose, but it's a little more drastic than that. But this is the first time that they felt it. And now I'm curious to see how 17's going to go, how they're going to handle that. This is their first battle with adversity in a way in terms of the war. So Okay. Man, I forgot how good this series is. Kings and Generals, man, you guys do great work. Okay. Like and subscribe. I'm going to end this here. And, man, this is a good series. Okay. Have a good day. Have a good night. And thanks for watching.